They went that way.
Okay, male or female?
Neither. They, them.
What?
That's their pronoun?
Okay, so how many were there?
Oh my God, one, you idiot. They're non-binary.
So does non-binary have a hole or a pole? We just need to clarify.
They who? Who them? Where why? Who's who? Who's who? They, them, or who?
We're having pronoun trouble again.
They went that way.
For me personally, I'm a double pole, if you know what I mean. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. My name is Zurkanowski here of wearechange.org, and we have a packed house for you guys today with some really incredible and special guests all around from a lot of very unique, interesting places. One person snuck in here. We didn't even know he was here. And I guess he's planning to live here with us forever. We're going to get into that plus a lot more. Share this broadcast with your friends and family members as we are going to be going live for the next 2 hours. And we have a lot of very crazy stories to talk about, as of course there are some new laws that have been passed in places like Colorado and New York City that are absolutely out of this world and something that Clint is taking very personally himself. We're going to be talking about that, a lot of geopolitical news, a lot of other spicy conversations that we can't even mention here on this particular platform, but we will continue the conversation later on rumble.com/wearechange. We're going to be live for the next hour here, 2 hours in total, and you guys can now participate in the chat by simply signing up and becoming members of lukeunfiltered.com. For less than 50 cents a day, you get a plethora of amazing offers of value, one including the ability to call into this show and ask us anything in the spur of the moment, unfiltered, uncensored, raw questions from you guys calling in as members of lukeunfiltered.com. Another way that you guys could participate is by going to mysuperchat.com. Yes, that is our actual website, and your super chats will actually show up on the screen when we have the conversations with all of the amazing people here in this particular room. So definitely check out mysuperchat.com, Luke Uncensored or lukeunfiltered.com, doesn't matter. Click on the links down below and join and participate in this broadcast that is going to be going live from 7 p.m. Eastern all the way to 9 p.m. Eastern with some very interesting human beings. One of them is the senior Breitbart tech reporter, Alum. Alum, for the people who don't know you, who are you?
I'm Alan Bakari. I've been covering tech censorship pretty much since it began at Breitbart News. I also wrote a book published in 2020 called Deleted, Big Tech's Battle to Erase the Trump Movement and Steal the Election, which, as the title explains, is all about how tech companies influenced the 2020 election and how they plan to influence all future elections going forward. So check it out. You can get it at Amazon and all other major booksellers. And to stay up to date on tech censorship, just check out my byline at Breitbart News.
Definitely send me that link and then we'll promote it to everyone in the chat room. But I like to say that we were censored before it was cool to be censored. And then, of course, we also have Clint Russell of the Liberty Lockdown podcast, who, not surprisingly, was also censored. And not surprisingly, also received a little strike on his channel there, which, we've just been warning him about. We'll explain in a little bit. Clint, who are you?
Clint Russell, host of Liberty Lockdown. I got a little strikey poo for my interview with the QAnon shaman, and oops. But, I'm happy to be here. I'm also the co-host of Tower Gang, as well as this fine show, thebestpoliticalshow.com. Thank you for tuning in. Hit that subscription button and leave a comment while you're at it. Ian, what's up, brother?
Ian Crossland, DMT graphene cat poop enthusiast, is also in the house.
I'm so glad that you associate graphene and DMT with me, particularly DMT. That's awesome. Where's my camera? Is this
right
it?
there.
What's
right
up,
there.
everybody? How you doing? Ian Crossland, co-host of Timcast IRL and host of Ian Crossland Live on YouTube, Rumble, X, Twitter, and also on Minds and Facebook.
Nice.
It's great. I quadcast. I quintcast. Quintcast. There's 5 of them.
That sounds very adult, but we'll get into that in a little bit. As of course, Ian left. He's no longer coming back on Timcast IRL. He said he's only going to be on thebestpoliticalshow.com, and we are happy to have him. As of course, he calls Tim's residence the Blair Witch Project, an utter crap hole, and he's done with that place. He's like, I don't like it. I want to be here in Miami with all the cool people like Clint and myself.
If we
so
weren't
Ian,
on
thank you.
TV, I would have interrupted you. Oh, you're welcome.
But thanks for.
But you're also still lying, so people know.
Never. Also joining us is Stephanie. Stephanie, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Oh, geez, here, Stephanie.
Hi,
Share the
everyone.
mic.
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Steph We Are Change.
All right, let's just get right into the news stories. As of course, we have this one from the Daily Mail, specifically describing how, quote, America's healthiest state, Colorado, is set to ban fat phobia to, quote, stop discrimination by employers and housing providers against overweight people as obesity rates across the U.S. soar. And it's not just Colorado implementing these laws, it's also New York City that just passed a law banning discrimination based on height and weight, which has actually gone into effect, which is absolutely insane. It clearly violates the First Amendment. It clearly violates the Constitution. It clearly violates the Bill of Rights, and us as Americans being able to actually be honest with each other. As, of course, I think we do need to call people out for being unhealthy. There's been a big movement to try to normalize obesity. That movement is normalizing a lot of diabetes. That movement is normalizing a lot of premature deaths and heart disease that I think should be called out and, in my opinion, controversial take here, should be discriminated against. As, of course, individuals should be treated, with love, with care, and consideration, but at a certain time and a moment, you do need some tough love. You do need someone to say, hey, this is really bad for you. And by you not taking care of yourself, you're actually also hurting the people around you. That's my perspective. Some people say I'm too harsh. What do you guys think?
I understand the philosophical moral objection to extreme eugenics. I don't agree with all of it. Obviously, there are plenty of examples of how eugenics can go too far. But it seems to me basic common sense that you shouldn't ingrain dysgenics, the opposite of eugenics, the opposite of encouraging fitness, into law. That seems like a totally bizarre thing for a society to do. It doesn't help anyone in society. It doesn't create a healthy, strong nation, and it's bad for individuals. Why would any country do it?
I have a pretty basic constitutional response to this: is that I have a right to associate or disassociate with who I prefer. And I find it really appalling that, even though, like the Civil Rights Act, for instance, it was done for the best of intentions, in my estimation. But the reality is that because of that precedent, it now, it forces us to do business with people that we may not want to. If I'm a landlord and I find that a tenant would be too, damaging to my property, I should have the right to tell them, not today. You have to find another option. For any reason. It's my property. I bought a $500,000 house, and you're going to now dictate who I get to rent it to. I think it's an absurdity, and I think that it's ultimately un-American, and it's against a multitude of constitutional rights.
And I think that gets to the legal point as well that Luke was making about it being unconstitutional. Being fat is not a protected class under the Civil Rights Act, and
it's coming.
There are many bad consequences of the civil rights regime. That's a huge driver of censorship. That's a huge driver of the woke culture, the culture of fear and self-censorship that we see in so many institutions and companies. But being fat is not a protected civil rights class, so I don't see how this survives the courts.
Yeah, you heard that, Clint. Damn right. Okay?
That's bullying. Protect me, government.
Are you going to get the state involved now and get New York City to come here and be like, hey, but these laws are just ridiculous, because if someone wants to be a mean person or even a rude person, whatever you might describe it, they have a right to do that. And in New York City, people are getting arrested for a lot of the hate speech clauses. A lot of it is just, a lot of the times, let's just be real here, based on someone deciding that they're personally hurt by someone's choice words. And again, words only have power if you give them power. Now, I understand harassment is a different thing than just being rude or insulting somebody, but I think the court of public opinion hasn't handled here, because if someone's rude, if someone's really a bad person, they usually get called out on social media. People don't usually want to work with them. People don't want to associate with them. And I think we have a right to be those people. Getting the law involved here is only going to, of course, make people want to do this even more. It's like the hot stove. It's like, hey, don't touch this. Now I want to touch this. Now I want to talk about the fats. Now I specifically want to talk about diabetes. I want to talk about cancer. I want to talk about heart disease. I want to talk about all that. And I want to home it in, because we soon might be living in a reality where we can't discuss any of these things honestly, and we have to be careful of the frickin' social justice warrior police that will be worrying what you're saying as, of course, crime skyrockets and burglaries and thefts and murders go up dramatically in cities. But don't worry, the city's on you on like white on rice if you dare say something mean, which is ridiculous. It's stupid in my opinion.
And there are always two sides to this, you know, this focus on protecting people's feelings and protecting people from mean words, because obviously you can be as mean as you want and abusive as you want towards conservatives. If you're someone like Chris Rufo, there are thousands of people there who'll just hurl abuse at you on social media.
Or just any kind of average white guy. You're an average white guy. You can get verbally abused all you want.
Of course.
But if you're a protected class person,
Oh no, hating straight white males is as close to an official ideology of American institutions as there is.
it's trendy. It's in every commercial. It's in every TV show. It's in every movie. You can't not see it, as of course it's just becoming very evident. There's major memes about this too, especially when it comes to the particular acting roles and the particular demographics and actors that are placed in certain positions, and it's just overbearing in my opinion, because these are the same people who are like, we should prioritize emotions over facts. And that's essentially what I think is happening here. And once we go down this path, you give the government ample room to just absolutely obliterate any kind of civil rights that you have as an American.
Well, let me add to that. It was the ADA, I think it was in the 1980s, but I could be wrong. The Americans with Disabilities Act that required all businesses of certain size to implement, elevators for wheelchair accessibility. What it ultimately did is it just opened this door for tremendous amounts of litigation that was total nonsense. People that never intended to get the job, they would just go to a business that was a small startup or just didn't have enough, revenue to make the improvements to the building to be accessible to these people. And then they would turn around and they would sue them, even though they had no intention of getting the job. And you would have a litany of dozens of lawsuits from one individual who's just going around to these businesses. But they would settle out of court. They would get 10 or 15 grand, and that can be enough to shut down a small business. And I think that this is once again opening that door where now if someone, like, for instance, if an overweight person goes in and they want to be a waiter, or I guess there wouldn't be a waiter, a waitress at Hooters, for instance, and they say, well, you don't exactly meet the body type that we're looking for. That's not what our clientele comes in for. Well, that's now illegal in Colorado, theoretically. And I just think that this is just another infringement into private property rights that we should push back against, regardless of how you feel about acceptance of, overweight people.
Clint is a big supporter of Hooters, and he is pissed off just at this very fact.
Really personally.
Yeah, you should. You absolutely should, as of course Hooters is not really Hooters anymore.
That's right.
And they've taken away this cultural icon away from us.
Dudes in, midriffs, like
dude cheerleaders. Oh wait, they already got those.
Yeah,
but
first they came for Lola Bunny, and then
it started with Lola Bunny. You're right. You're absolutely freaking right. I had a depiction of Lola Bunny that one of the viewers actually sent me that I put on my wall. Seamus Coughlin freaked out about it. His eyes were like, "This is too impure." No, I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. Legit. But if Seamus Coughlin had his way, we would be having more of these laws, which, again, in my opinion, are absolutely ridiculous and allow the government to trample on your basic civil liberties, because who decides what is offensive? Who decides whose emotions are hurt here? And of course, they will use and abuse this power for their own personal benefit. As in New York City, there's already laws on the books that protect individuals from housing, job, and any kind of public discrimination with age, gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, and haircuts. Yes, you heard that. Haircuts. You can't discriminate someone based on their hair, now their height, and now their weight. As New York State also announced that they're going to be policing hate speech and launching a major kind of investigative board to go after New York citizens that dare to, of course, express opinions that go against any of this kind of larger woke ESG ideology, where you can only criticize people if they're white guys. Everyone else, you better be careful, which is, again, just shows you the double standards here, which are kind of disgusting in my opinion, and just shows you how far a state will go to try to indoctrinate you into their kind of woke causes and ideologies. As, of course, the legal ramifications here are going to be huge. In New York City, they're already levying fines close to $250,000 based off someone discriminating someone based on their hair type. Right? Yes. That's literally happening right now. Government tax resources in New York City, one of the most taxed jurisdictions in the world, are literally investing money in a private Stasi spy group that makes sure individuals can't dare express opinions that might be too spicy or might offend a certain group of people. What kind of world are we living in? An absolutely absurd clown world, in my opinion. I don't see this getting any better. I do see a lot of socialistic kind of democratic states just kind of getting crazier from here, as in Europe. We already have a lot of these laws. Alum, you're from the United Kingdom. I've seen people in your country arrested for offending the Queen and offending the royalty. That is where we are going. But in America, the royalty is BlackRock, State Streets, Goldman Sachs, and all these other private globalist banksters and corporations that don't give a damn about you. Do you think I'm being hyperbolic here, or do you think there's some merit in that?
I don't think so. I think blue states especially are taking things to a massive extreme. And I know it can sometimes get even worse than in Europe and in European countries. Because in European countries, all of the hate speech laws, they come from the government, and that comes from a very lengthy democratic process. It's still bad, don't get me wrong. But in the US, like, a corporation can just decide to, like, implement the furthest extreme of wokeness, the furthest extreme of clamping down on dissident speech, because that's where it comes from. It often doesn't come from the, well, in the case of New York, it does come from the government, but often it's woke corporations pushing this, and there's no legal restraint on what they can do.
Talking about discrimination, corporate discrimination, this Trans-Pacific Partnership, they were trying to pass in the early, I think 2012, I think Trump came in and shut it down, basically, or turned it off. And it had this thing in it called the Investor-State Dispute Settlement Clause, where a corporation, like an oil company, a Malaysian oil company, could sue the American people for discriminating against them, i.e. not buying their oil. Because when you discriminate, you're essentially making a choice. That's what the word means. So that dog's barking, it looks angry, I'm going to make a discriminatory suggestion to not walk towards it. Yes, I am discriminating that dog seems dangerous. If I don't want to buy your oil, I'm discriminating. And there was an opportunity for these corporations to be able to sue us as taxpayers and get the money out of our government. It was insane. So I don't know. At some point, you got to be realistic. You got to, like, use common sense. Like, if someone's very overweight, really big, and they're taking up 2 seats on an airplane, they should be paying for those seats. I don't care if it's fat or it's because they chose to stick a bunch of pillows in their shirt and they're taking up 2 seats. If you take up 2 seats, you take up 2 seats. It's like that. I think also that's why the economy is one of the best discriminators, because people won't buy it. I mean, unless you got force of law forcing people to. I'm just glad they shut down the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Well, Elon Musk actually made this point about his acquisition of Twitter, and as Alan was describing with the red states versus blue states, how this is kind of creating a bifurcated, America in terms of these laws. But what I found fascinating about Elon's take on this was that all of this, the most woke progressive agenda from Silicon Valley was not just being spread to the entire United States, but the entire globe, because if their parameters are adopted and you have these extraordinarily leftist, I mean, most of them are Marxists or communists, and they're like, well, whatever our belief system is, that's the new parameters, that's the new Overton window by which all internet dialogue is permitted. I mean, what does that do to the culture? You have the most extreme 2% of civilization that is dictating to the other 98% that you can no longer have conversations that are outside of our preference. I mean, it's just psychotically dangerous.
It's almost as if they want you to be fat, if they want you to be obese, they want you to be lazy and not enough to fight back against the servitude that they're putting you into with these laws and regulations and all these bureaucratic measures that are, of course, there to stifle any kind of legitimate dissent, because this will be used and abused, because there's so many fat health ministers out there. During those past 3 years in 2020, it was just shown how all these health ministers were full of crap. They were lying to all of their people. They were obese. They were not taking care of their own health as well. And one of the things that I always see, and, I try to get my blood drawn now a lot just to see my levels, just to optimize my health. I see a lot of fat doctors. I shouldn't be seeing a lot of fat doctors, okay? If you're a doctor and you're fat, we need to have a serious conversation there, buddy. And I usually try to interject in those kind of situations, which makes it a little bit awkward. But there's nothing more awkward than being in an airplane. And the airlines are responsible here, too. They're very culpable here, too, because they're making those seats smaller and smaller and smaller. Americans are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and fatter and fatter. There's nothing worse than having a middle seat and having just two ginormous, huge, bodacious, lumpy, sweaty, fat human beings with their rolls just all over you. If you're like in a pudgy Play-Doh frickin' dollhouse, just getting engulfed by their essence, their low vibrational life essence, and just fat all around you. It's disgusting, and it happens a lot. Who do you blame here? The airlines or the person who is saying, "Hey, I'm fat and I'm beautiful"?
Well, I guess one of the big problems is, Europeans walk everywhere, whereas Americans drive everywhere.
Americans are a lot fatter than Europeans too. Europeans are very, very, very healthy, especially the French. They smoke a lot, drink a lot of wine, walk a lot. The Amish walk a lot too.
Smoking is a great way to lose weight.
That's true too. Yeah, as soon as I quit smoking, I got really fat.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead. You were just saying how the
But yes, the walking around. Unfortunately, you got a bit of a problem in America because if you walk around certain neighborhoods of many cities, that's a bad idea. Lots of people on Twitter say, well, we just need dense walkable cities and lovely European style architecture, but they've never been to New Orleans.
Well,
Has both those things.
yeah, or San Francisco, or New York, or the list goes on and on.
Well, no, San Francisco is nice now because a dictator visited, so we just need more dictators.
But that was only 3 days though. That wasn't the whole time.
They're already letting the encampments come back, and this is I don't want any sort of government programs to try and increase the drive to get people to move to cities. This is what I was actually really disappointed with Donald Trump when he was talking about these. What did he call them? They were like America cities or something. The greatest, the biggest, the best cities. Where his big plan for his second term in office was to create these big walkable cities for additional housing and things like that. And I was like, that's right in alignment with the World Economic Forum. Like that's exactly what they're talking about is these 15-minute cities. So I don't want any central planning of the economy. I would encourage anybody, no matter how you feel about Trump or any other political leader, to get away from this belief that these people are going to do this for your own benefit. If there is a market demand for these types of cities, there will be entrepreneurs that create them. So you don't need to have the government that's instituting this from a top-down centralized fashion. It will ultimately create economic dislocations, and that's not good. That's why we're in this position in the first place.
Before the show started, I thought you really made a good argument, Alum, as of course these new height rules are definitely going to be affecting the Tinder tots, who of course are discriminating against dudes and their height. As right now, I have pulled up a meme of Jabba the Hutt asking a dude, "How tall are you?" As Tinder just even a couple days ago implemented new height verification systems where they use your federal identification systems in order to make sure that you are the height that you claim to be on your Tinder profile. I could now see so many short dudes, all the manlets out there, all the people who love Napoleon coming out and being like, "This is our chance, boys. We're going to sue the crap out of all these Tinder tots." What do you think?
So height discrimination is also a part of these laws now, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's just weird. Like if your ceiling is too low, you get sued. It's
Yeah. What about if Yao Ming comes through? You're like, oh, I only have an 8-foot ceiling.
I want this implemented in the NBA right now, okay? The NBA is racist, discriminatory policies, especially their height phobia and fat phobia. I want to see fats. I want to see fat little Asians running around in the NBA right now, or I'm suing you. If there's any fat Asians, contact us right now. We're going to have a class action lawsuit against the NBA. I want the New York Knicks right now, half of the team at least, has to be fat Asians, minimum.
I want the Los Angeles Lakers to be legally obligated to hire 40-year-old, 6'1", middling athletic people named Clint. And if you don't do that, then you are going to be sued into oblivion.
I get a lot of
ageist, fattest, and heightest.
like almost anger about people when I see obesity and I think like these people, a lot of them have been lied to or they haven't been told how dangerous a lot of the food supply is, like new sugars that are being experimented on people, food colorings, God knows, with these chemicals that are blocking endocrine function and causing weight gain. But like at the same time, I know what it's like. I want to eat cake. I want to eat as much as I want whenever I want, but I don't. I stop myself and I sacrifice that aspect of reality because I need to maintain health and stay healthy. So I look around, I see people like lazily just giving over to the demi urge to eat sugar, eat sweet. I don't even want to put that out there, but like it's disturbing and it makes me angry, and I don't want it to make me angry. I want to have compassion for the people.
Yeah.
But it's like, wake up.
Plus, the same multinational corporations that essentially hijacked the FDA, they're literally putting all these horrible ingredients in our food that is causing obesity, heart disease, and cancer rates to go up dramatically. Not just the seed oils, not just the fake sugars, not just the soy, not just the glyphosate. You look at an entire food industry, it has been poisoned. Me and Steph recently, more Steph than me, worked on a crap list that is available for members of LukeUnfiltered.com, where you could download a whole list of all the items because they keep changing the name of these items. High fructose corn syrup has been renamed so many different times. Seed oils have been renamed so many different times. We literally created a whole indexing of a lot of these lists. Steph did predominantly working on the crap list that if you're a member of LukeUnfiltered.com, download it, and next time you go to the supermarket, just look at the ingredients. Just make sure that whatever food you're purchasing and buying is not on the crap list. As of course, that list probably needs to be updated a lot. Right, Steph?
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm sure there's 100 things that we're missing on there. But if anybody finds something that isn't on the list, please let us know.
Well, I mean, it is obviously true that our food supply is tainted, perhaps intentionally so. In many events, I think it is. But I would once again encourage people to take personal responsibility for this. Yes, it is harder to stay in shape than it was 30 years ago, with the food supply being much more, farm raised and organic. But it doesn't change the fact that it's your personal responsibility to know what you're putting in your body and what you expect out of yourself. And I think that that's been the biggest problem, is that culturally we've gotten away from, just being generally responsible for ourselves. If we get into student loans, we expect the government to pay them off. Like, this is just it's a sickness, and it's ultimately breaking us.
The idea of government is the most dangerous idea because people think someone else is looking out for them. And I think that is the most wrong kind of thinking that you could ever have in your life, because none of these bureaucrats give a damn about you. None of these people care about you. They never did. And this is why I think even if we had no government, we had total anarchy. You might disagree, Adam, but I think we would have a way better way of life, since people would now get rid of this illusion that there's someone looking out for them, because there never was, there never will be. And the more we realize that, the quicker we understand that, the better life would be, in my opinion.
I will say the West has the worst kind of authoritarianism. In a way, it's worse than Chinese authoritarianism because, the Chinese will try and micromanage everyone's life, They'll try and micromanage obesity away by regulating what people eat. Their entire social credit system is designed to micromanage things like smoking in public places, loitering, just being antisocial, being low trust. So it's all focused on creating perfect citizens and eliminating bad habits, which, would be very, very annoying for Westerners who are used to having freedom. But Westerners already don't have freedom because, your political speech is regulated, and, that's seen as the antisocial behavior to clamp down on your political opinions. So meanwhile, being fat and being unhealthy is now encouraged by at least 2 states.
I think that's
so we have authoritarianism that punishes being, recognizing reality is punished, whereas there's not even any good public health regulation.
Yeah, and incentivizes the worst possible actions a human being could take for themselves, because there's a lot of predators out there that literally profit off of people being miserable, off of them being fat, off of them being depressed, off of them not having any family, not having any kind of religion. And I think this is the doctrine of enslavement that I would agree with you is just as bad. as you would argue, I think your point is valid. Way worse than the dictatorship in China, where, of course, they make sure that the streets are clean and that there's no robbery on the public sidewalks there, when in the United States, they do the opposite of that.
Yeah, neither kind of authoritarianism is ideal. No kind of authoritarianism is ideal. But it's strange that in America it seems to be pointed towards making people more unhealthy and stupider, whether at least in China they're aiming for clean streets.
Yeah, a lot of it I think is profit because the corn industry and is so prevalent in the United States. Like corn sugar. Like I would be concerned if the government were to disappear, that we would have private industry making and selling the most addictive, sugary foods with no oversight. I mean, maybe you could argue
you mean like they're doing now?
Well, you could argue that bad government's worse than no government, but I would counter that argument and say no government's the worst possible system. If it was only corporations just addicting people to foods, let's call sugar a drug for the moment. Some kinds of sugars might harm you like drugs. That it's really up to the individual to learn how to cook, man. It's to learn how to find the healthy oils and to make those yourself. Because if you're relying on corporations, whether there's a government oversight or not, unless you got like a Chinese authoritarian system where they're like, and you can guarantee that they're making sure every corporation is not poisoning you. But I mean, that's some technocratic hellhole I don't want to dive into with that kind of.
But don't we already languish under the biggest state in human history, and we have skyrocketing obesity rates because, I mean, like what you're describing is you just said that no government would be worse than even this. And I just don't see how that pans out.
Because the private companies become the government if there's no social government.
You're describing our government now.
Yeah, I mean, it's still kind of a hybrid, yeah.
It is sad that things have gotten so fiscal, that the government's so obsessed with turning a profit.
The government doesn't turn a profit. They lose trillions annually. It's the corporate sector that's in bed with the government that is essentially extracting our wealth simultaneously that the government is going, underwater. But I think it's vultures feasting on the corpse of the American empire. It's like they realize that the fiat game is over, and they're just trying to load up their wheelbarrow before the whole house catches on fire.
Yeah, absolutely. We got some super chats I want to get into. One from Joseph that says, "We are all fragile. We are all vulnerable. But if we're getting laughed at, breaks you." Hold on, let me move this. Man, what are we coming to?
Yeah.
No wonder everyone is lonely and sad. Joseph, great point, great super chat here. I agree with that.
I agree in that you don't have a constitutional right to not be offended. That is not in our Constitution. You're going to get offended. That's life. Get used to it and learn how to roll with it, man. And you have a constitutional right to offend people with legal speech. That's how it is in the United States. Welcome. That's why it's so great here.
Exactly. I'm really disturbed. I was actually talking about this earlier this morning. I'm really disturbed that this is a trend that is picking up speed, particularly in the Western democratic nations. As you already know, the UK already has many of these speech laws. Ireland is now rolling out some of the most psychotic things I've ever read in my life. They were saying that...
we're going to get into that in a little bit. We also have the clip as well. But if you want to finish your thought, finish your thought.
No, just the trend line is so counter to what makes us foundationally better than the rest of the world, which is that we have the ability to speak, and we have the ability to speak unpopular things that can offend not just your neighbor, because that's not really the point. It's about offending your government, and that's really where this is all coming from. This is not about protecting minority classes. It's not about protecting any sort of community. It's about protecting the people that are in power. They don't want you to be able to speak out. That's the whole game. They don't care about you. That's really where this is headed, and you have to be a child not to see it.
We got another super chat here by I'm Not Your Buddy Guy. Great username, great guy. Thank you so much for participating in all the super chats. Saying, quote, saying Trump gaffed when he said Obama is president. I mean, come on, Luke. Do you really think Biden is running the show? Trump is just saying who is. I'm not your buddy guy. Good point. You're talking about the video that I released earlier today where I was highlighting some of the gaffes. And yeah, essentially, this is not just Obama's third term. This is the CIA's 56th term. The Central Intelligence Agencies, the FBI, the deep states, 60th turn. So, there's many ways we could spin this, but overall, I do agree with your point. Now, I want to play a video that has heavily irked me today, and there has been nothing more offensive said than what this Green Party senator from Ireland said that I find extremely offensive, very dangerous. And no, I wouldn't institute any law to stop her idiocracy. But here she is anyway, providing to us why women in power are so great.
When you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom. That's exactly what we're doing here, is we are restricting freedom, but we're doing it for the common good. You will see throughout our Constitution, yes, you have rights, but they are restricted for the common good. Everything needs to be balanced. And if your views on other people's identities go to make their lives unsafe, insecure, and cause them such deep discomfort that they cannot live in peace, then I believe that it is our job as legislators to restrict those freedoms for the common good.
I will be having nightmares about this lady and what she said tonight in absolute horror. As you look at recorded human history, this is always the justification. This is always just them doing the moral thing. We have to do this in the name of righteousness, and they end up doing some of the most evil, sinister, messed up things that you can't even fathom.
She's also wrong because some laws are created to prevent the government from restricting your freedom. That's what our Bill of Rights is. So there's 10 laws right there that prove her wrong.
Absolutely, 100%. I agree with that.
I'll go a different angle with this. I actually appreciated the honesty. This is what government is. It is a consistent infringement, a restriction on your liberty. And this is why I'm ultimately an anarcho-capitalist and a libertarian, is that I want as minimal as humanly possible. She's just one of the only politicians on earth that's telling you the truth. That's exactly how they view it. Yes, we're gonna restrict your rights, and it's for the greater good. Deal with it. Now, what the greater good actually amounts to is not the greater good, but rather their benefit. So that's the only thing that she was deceptive about. But otherwise, she was telling the truth.
Yeah, it is always nice when the mask slips. So many of these people will. People with similar viewpoints will phrase their arguments, they'll shroud them in terms like, oh, we have to protect our democracy, we have to deal with misinformation. Whereas, this lady's being refreshingly honest. She's saying, yes, we want to restrict your freedom. That's our entire goal.
But it's for you. It's for your own good, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, the own good is the thing that I personally am kind of distressed about, because it's not for your own good. No. Anytime a government used any kind of emergency to take away your liberties, they have abused their power. And now, if you continue this trajectory, the government is just going to be creating more emergencies just so they have more of an excuse to trample more of your rights. They have been doing that throughout recorded human history, and it is one of the biggest dangers. Democide is something that a lot of people don't know about, but should know about, specifically when it comes to the larger dangers of modern day society, that at any moment, at any time, especially with all these technological advancements, could go total freedom or total slavery. And I think it's fair to say we're on the total slavery trajectory, as some people are even going as far as to argue that the current situation in Ireland that led to this also was a creation of big government, as Elon Musk now is warning that the laws that they're trying to push through in Ireland could have you arrested for just having a meme on your phone. And looking at the legislation, that's pretty much what they're trying to pass. And I would get multiple life sentences if that was true, and if I lived in Ireland.
What is it? What are they trying to pass in Ireland right now?
I mean, what he just described is that if it's anything that has they say if it has the potential to incite hate, or if it's negligent in your, if you don't intend to incite hate, but you're negligent in protecting against that. So basically, it's a black box. They're saying we can lock you up for anything that goes against whatever their preferred narrative
so
is.
This is the actual text of a bill in Ireland that they're trying to push through. And Wokeness was actually tweeting this particular bill and this particular kind of larger explanation of how you could go to jail just for saving memes on your phone. And this is something that Elon Musk responded to. Elon Musk brought a lot of attention to, as of course the situation in Ireland is a little bit tumultuous. Some people would say, when hasn't it been tumultuous? Now it's pretty tumultuous too, with a lot of pressures, especially when it comes to new replacement populations that are coming in to that country, making housing more unaffordable and labor cheaper. A part of what I think is a Koch brothers plan that is being realized, all under the name of woke social justice warrior policies of open immigration. And in reality, this is policies that have screwed over the Irish people and has led to a very horrible situation where some Irish children were particularly selected and attacked. Alan, we were talking about this before. For the people who are not paying attention, how would you describe what's really kind of happening in Ireland?
Well, regular Irish citizens are objecting to mass immigration, as many other populations in the West have done. There was a stabbing. A undocumented immigrant, I believe he was undocumented anyway, attacked people outside a school, and in response there were demonstrations and protests and rioting from regular Irish citizens. And instead of responding to the concerns of citizens, the concerns about mass immigration and about the crime that comes with it, the Irish government instead promised a clampdown on hate speech and incitement. And this law that apparently criminalizes having the wrong sort of content on your phone, downloading the wrong meme from 4chan or whatever, is part of that. But I will say it's a very interesting situation because Ireland is a very interesting historical case. They spent over 100 years trying to throw off, the rule of the English, which they thought was tyrannical, but now they're dealing with an entirely different sort of tyranny. So I'll certainly be interested to see how, the regular Irish people respond. They certainly don't have a history of, just backing down and just giving up, even in the face of a vastly stronger and more powerful foe.
Yeah, the Irish people love their potatoes and they love to fight too. Let's just be a little bit general here, if you give me the luxury to do so. And, Ireland, especially Northern Ireland, I've spent some time there, even with Tim doing some on-the-ground reporting there, especially when they were doing the huge effigy burnings of the Pope there with huge 5-story structures that they light on fire every summer there. There's still a lot of tensions there between the Protestants and the Catholics. And now you add a third group into the mix that, again, is making life more difficult for the average poor person. And you yourself have a situation that is not going to be, I think, going away anytime soon, but only becoming more and more inflamed as the government there is spending their resources investigating Conor McGregor from some spicy messages that he sent on social media in regards to this stabbing situation that unfolded in Ireland. We got a super chat by Scroats McGoats who said, quote, "The entire Irish government should be deposed immediately." Scroats McGoats, that's a good point that I think a lot of people would agree with. What about you guys?
I'll bring it domestic. I mean, this is the exact same phenomenon that's happening in America. You have people that are contesting the legitimacy of our elections or immigration policy, and instead of actually dealing with the legitimate grievances of the American people, the people that actually pay taxes in this country, the people that actually put money on the table for the government to rule over us, they ignore their legitimate criticisms. And instead, they label them as domestic extremists. They start to categorize it as hate speech to speak out against immigration. It's the exact same tale, just a little bit advanced in the Ireland case. But we're on that track too. So I just wanted to kind of bring it back to why this matters to an American audience. I think people aren't taking this seriously enough. But if you've seen the videos where there's these migrant caravans that are coming up, and they're being given navigation
GPS coordinates.
GPS coordinates to make to traverse that border crossing. And it's like there's money and resources going into this, and I think that at some point, if we had any semblance of a legitimate investigative journalist class, you would hope that there would be someone that's actually digging into this to get to the bottom of it. But instead, we'll just ignore everybody else that's concerned about unmitigated immigration, and we'll start to call them, bigots and terrorists.
I saw Ivory Hecker went down to document it. Speaking of legitimate journalists,
there's a handful.
She was at the border, and they went up. There was a big group of what looked like migrants coming across the border, and she and someone else went up. And then the officers there, I don't know who they were, but they were like, "You can't be here. You can't be here." Well, we're American citizens. Are they? Because they're here. Can we come interview, and they were like, "You got to go. You can't be here. You can't." They're like, "Yeah, well, this is our country. Who are those people?
Well,
We're journalists."
they gave them traffic offense tickets that they had to show up to court to
In America.
because they were there reporting on the migrant crisis on the border, where the soldiers there were literally helping people get into the country through the barbed wire. So there was a couple court hearings about this, specifically outlining how, hey, you guys can't be helping these guys into the country. She came out, shouts out to Ivory Heckler. Her video clip went viral all over social media. I don't think a lot of people are credited her with U.S. authority figures literally just being like, yeah, just come on in. Yeah, America's open. Just walk in.
This is the problem with immigration. If they're really fleeing like genocide in their country, the United States is here for you. That is kind of my look at like, we can try that path. But if it's just people like, hey, we're bankrupt, we got to flee. No.
I actually go the opposite direction. I think that any valid immigration policy ought to be to the benefit of the American people. We're the ones that are here. We're the ones that are actually being robbed blind to support this government. I think that the policies for immigration ought to go in alignment with what they can actually contribute to our economic system. And if they are, skilled in IT or whatever, like there's tons of industries that we need labor in. I'm not really interested in being this like dumping ground for everyone who's dealing with a tyrannical government all over the world. In which case, okay, well then let's welcome in the Gazans next. Like we have to bring in a couple million of them too. Like this, it feels nice and it certainly sounds good, but I think if you actually were to just live out that policy over time, you would have no America.
I want to be able to handle refugees because there are times that people need to be able to find refuge in safe spaces. But
agreed.
So we're going to put them in Ian's house. Ian, how many refugees are you taking inside of your house right now?
Just my cat. But if people, I think the system has become so deranged with all these people mass migrating in that people don't have a tolerance for protecting people that are legitimately fleeing mass genocide.
Well, the other problem
is
is
a real problem for legal immigration as well. Because,
yes, big time.
People who are trying to legally immigrate or get a visa, they have to deal with a lot of suspicion because so many people are trying to defraud the system. I think the other interesting angle on the immigration debate is how it's a mechanism for political control. Bringing in large numbers of new voters who are then obligated to vote for the party that supports those mass immigration policies. That's another issue. In fact, members of the New Labour Party under Tony Blair even admitted to this, that this was part of Labour's political strategy. They're sort of like left-wing mainstream party in the UK, but they admitted to this, that this is going to help them politically. That's why they're supporting mass immigration.
Well, the other problem is that they're like, obviously this is a nation filled with immigrants. My family came over in the 1900s from Germany. Most of us aren't born from, our entire lineage isn't from here. So I'm not opposed to immigration, but the difference about where we are now versus where we used to be is that immigrants would usually acclimate into kind of this American ethos, maybe not in the first generation, but certainly by the second or third. It seems now that there is no American ethos that binds us. There is no faith in property rights and self-defense and kind of these like constitutional framework that really bound this disparate group of people. Now we're basically brought together on grievance politics. Actually, there is nothing to acclimate to. Like if you acclimate into like American academia, you're basically going to be some sort of critical theory nutcase. So it's like I don't know what the migrants are going to actually adapt to.
Yeah, it used to be mass media. You had like TV. That was indoctrinating the world for the last 100 years, radio and TV. And so people would come across the border and they'd get indoctrinated into our system. But now with like Facebook groups and things like that, people of disparate factions can like rise up overnight and create like mass movements and organized movements. And it's like, it can be very, very chaotic. That's just like an aspect of the system as a whole right now.
Yeah, even though I come down more on the side of the Palestinians in terms of the last month of conflict, it gives me tremendous pause to see the amount of people that are in the streets on the behalf of the Palestinians. It's so enormous, and this is not just an American phenomenon. This is globally. Like there's hundreds of thousands of people that have been in the streets over the past month on the behalf of a relatively small population on Earth. It's bizarre, and it doesn't seem organic. It's just deeply concerning to me, to be honest.
Especially all the fighting-aged men that are being introduced into our society. There's not a lot of refugees there. There's not a lot of women and children fleeing war. No, there's economic migrants coming in and taking advantage of social programs. And then mayors who kind of speak out against it after welcoming it are now being investigated by the FBI and having their cell phones confiscated and being charged with some very naughty accusations from 1993. So yeah, that's also happening. We got two Rumble rants.
This is just a final point. This is another area, perhaps the biggest area, where the civil rights religion really gets in the way of any semblance of a sane policy, because you're not allowed to say that, someone from Australia or someone from Germany or Poland is obviously going to integrate better into American society than someone from Gaza, and is also much less likely to, carry out a terrorist attack.
You've got language.
You can't say that, and you certainly can't build policy around it, even though that's obviously the sane way to do
because
things.
You've got religion. There are different things that make a people, is like your religion, your language, and your economic structure. So as long as you use the dollar and you speak English and I don't want to say you're a Christian because we're kind of a melting pot, but it tends to be, we've stemmed from Judeo-Christian. As long as you've got those three things in common, it's relatively easy. It's very easy to become an American.
Well, I think what's really ridiculous is like the vast majority of other nations on Earth have some sort of requirement for citizenship, but most of them have sculpted it for investment or financial capacity. Like you have to actually demonstrate that you won't be a burden on the system. But to even propose that as being a contingency upon immigration submission in America is like, oh, you're racist.
Well, that's how it works with legitimate immigration. Like if you need to get sponsored by a company to show like, I want to get my visa.
That's
like what are you going to
visa,
contribute? Yeah. But apparently, it's a different story if young families are just coming across an open border.
Yeah, as long as you just don't listen to the legal authorities and just come across, well, you're pretty much good to go. And it's like it's so backwards, and it really benefits people that are already violating the law as they enter, and then what imperative do they have to actually acclimate, to actually do the hard work to lift themselves up when you have all of this social safety net that sits there for them? Like I would be much more open to more liberal immigration policies if we didn't have this catastrophic social safety net, and if we didn't have 33 trillion, almost 34 trillion in national debt. But we're really playing with fire economically for the American people. And seeing as I live here, no matter how much I care about immigrant communities, I care about my people more. That's just human nature, and it's a lie to say otherwise. It really is.
Especially how screwed over the American people have been within the last few years of just the government absolutely stealing their money, abusing them, and then essentially acting like the reverse Robin Hood and giving all the money to the super rich people. I want to just read off a couple Rumble rants before we move on to Rumble. We got one from Crash Bandit that said, Josh from the Epoch Times covered what is going on at the U.S. border. 2+ years ago, the UN and NGOs moving these people around the world, funded by the government. Crash Bandit, yes, that has been happening. I've been covering that all the way from Europe, in Italy. Many, many years ago, I was on the border in Canada, where I saw people just walk in just like they are here from the United States, especially after Trump got elected. I was on the Mexican border showing you the huge migrant crisis there that was affecting people in Tijuana, Mexico. So, thank you for that.
I think he's talking
rant.
about Joshua Phillip. Joshua Phillip, Epoch Times, great journalist.
Yes. Right Now Reports has another Rumble rant saying, have you ever looked into the Fabian Society and their stated goals? They were behind the Fed, IMF, and World Bank. Members are H.G. Wells, John Keynes, Keynesian Economics, and Tony Blair. Have you guys ever heard of the Fabian Society?
I've heard of it. I'm not familiar with it, though. What about you, Alan?
Oh yeah, the Fabian Society. They're a deep part of the British left-wing establishment. They were started in, I believe, the 1920s. I could be wrong about the exact date, but around that time, and their entire philosophy was, what they called the Fabian strategy, which is a very, basically the long march through the institutions, a very slow way of developing influence over time before trying to implement any radical policies.
And it's kind of fair to say that they've been kind of successful at that, slowly and surely implementing a lot of their policies in very covert ways where people don't really realize how just extensively they've been able to influence powerful institutions
They
in this
founded
country.
the London School of Economics in 1895. Says that they were one of the founding organizations of the Labor Representation Committee in 1900. That's a long time.
We got another Rumble rant by John Doe saying, "Hi there, it's me again. I just wanted to know if you're interested in your extended free speech warranty." Yes, we should probably get free speech insurance. That actually exists. We should probably look into getting that, especially with what we are going to be saying on rumble.com in just a few minutes from now. We got another super chat from Joseph on YouTube. Joseph specifically coming out and saying, people have the wrong context. Whatever you perceived political issues at scale, 8 billion people. It takes generations. We are all stuck in this. Joseph, thank you for your super chats. Thanks for all the super chats of everyone participating in this. And if you guys know any good, free speech insurance companies, let us know, because we're going to need it, especially with the things we're going to get into on rumble.com. If you haven't gone to rumble.com and you are just on YouTube, what are you doing? Why are you just on the alphabet, globalist, corporatist, Hillary Clinton, ESG score aligned platform? Why are you not on rumble.com/we are change? We are change on rumble.com. And then you'll be able to find us. We will put the link right in there too. We got another super chat by John Medsky who says, Beanie said it's almost 8 p.m. You need to leave YouTube. Beanie Man didn't say anything to us, okay? Just because we stole Ian and have him here forever with us now
Fake news.
doesn't mean the Beanie Man gets to tell us what to do here, as of course we are now officially moving the conversation away from this horrible technocratic draconian platform, and we're headed towards the free bastion of speech where we could still say what we want that's on our minds. We don't have to play this we don't have to play these stupid games. We don't have to allude to things. We don't have to walk in this digital gulag. We could just go off. We will on rumble.com/we are change, rumble.com/we are change. Before we head over, just really quickly, Alan, where can people find you?
You can find my articles at breitbart.com. You can find me on Twitter at Alan Bakare. And if you search for Deleted Big Tech's Battle to Erase the Trump Movement, you can find my book.
Subscribe to me on Twitter at Liberty Lock Pod, and Liberty Lockdown's the show. You can find that on YouTube or Rumble, and I would appreciate a subscription.
We got some other super chats. One by Fish Rants, who said Steph is a dead ringer for Linda Cardellini. $100 next cast as Velma.
I'm not offended.
Okay.
She's a smoke show, dude. That's a good one.
Marshall said, we deadlift to #deleted today. Thank you, Marshall. Do your deadlifts if you haven't done them, especially if you don't have any back problems. Sorry, Ian, where can people find you?
You can follow me at Ian Crossland on the internet. I interviewed Alex Stein today. It was absolutely fascinating. So it's on YouTube, Rumble, Minds, Facebook, X, every platform essentially. And you can catch me most nights, Monday through Friday, Timcast IRL on YouTube, which is coming up, I hear.
I don't know about that. They were talking about cat. They were talking about cat poop.
Yeah, toxoplasmosis. It's no joke.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself. If you love cats, look at a toxoplasmosis because you might have it.
Ian likes cat poop.
This is breaking news from Joe Rogan 2015.
I do, and I don't know why.
Toxoplasmosis.
Yeah, it's the real deal, man.
You can find me on Instagram at Steph We Are Change.
All right. Get your lazy butts over to Rumble, where I want to say other things. I can't say it now because we are still on YouTube. Thank you all for your super chats. We are going to be taking callers from members of LukeUnfiltered.com in 30 minutes on rumble.com/we are change. As now we are officially